In the late 1960s, a shadow fell over Northern California. It didn't arrive with a thunderclap. It seeped in like a fog rolling over the bay, carried on whispers, police reports, and the anxious voices of late-night news broadcasters, young couples, seeking a moment of privacy on secluded roads and lovers' lanes, suddenly found themselves in the crosshairs of a predator. These were places they had always felt safe, insulated from the world's dangers. But that sense of security was shattered by the cold, metallic sound of gunfire. Victims were shot at close range, a detail that spoke of a chilling intimacy. Some survived, but just long enough to give a description of their attacker. And what they described sent a shiver down the spine of even the most hardened investigators. They spoke of a man with no discernible emotion, no panic, no rage, no fear, only a cold, unnerving precision. And then something even more disturbing happened. The killer, this ghost in the dark, decided he no longer wanted to hide. He wanted to talk. He picked up a phone, and he contacted the police. By 1968, California was already a landscape of upheaval. Social unrest, cultural shifts, and a growing distrust of authority were reshaping the state. But nothing could have prepared the public for what was about to unfold. Police departments began receiving reports of brutal attacks on couples in parked cars. The crimes were sudden, violent, and terrifyingly efficient. There was no robbery, no struggle, no apparent motive. Just the flash of a gun, and then silence. Fear began to take root in everyday life. Parents warned their teen-age children to stay home after dark. Couples stopped going out at night. The simple idea of safety, something once taken for granted, began to crumble. That creeping shadow had found a foothold, and it was growing larger with each passing night. At first, investigators believed the attacks were unrelated tragic incidents. They happened in different locations, on different dates, to different victims. But as the case files piled up, a horrifying pattern started to emerge. Young couples, isolated spots, late at night, and a killer who approached with an almost casual calmness. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He moved with a terrifying sense of purpose. In several cases, the victims were shot at extremely close range, suggesting a level of confidence and control that was deeply unsettling. This wasn't the work of someone who lost control in a moment of passion. This was someone who planned his actions with meticulous care. This wasn't random violence. This was a hunt. But not everyone died. And the few who survived gave investigators their only glimpse into the mind of this phantom. They described a man who appeared utterly composed, almost detached from the horror he was inflicting. No trembling hands, no frantic movements, just a steady, unblinking presence. One survivor recalled how quickly it all happened, how the attacker never raised his voice, never hesitated for a moment. Another remembered the sound of footsteps walking away afterward, not running, but walking, as if the killer knew he had all the time in the world. These accounts terrified the police, because they suggested something far worse than rage. They suggested practice. Most killers act on impulse. They get emotional, they panic, they make mistakes, and they leave behind a trail of chaos. This killer did the opposite. He struck with surgical precision. He chose his locations carefully, and then he vanished without a trace. The crime scenes were frustratingly clean. No fingerprints that could be confidently matched to a suspect. No clear witnesses who got a good look at his face. No usable forensic evidence left behind. Each new attack raised more questions than answers, and the longer he remained free, the bolder he became. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment this series of brutal crimes transformed into something else entirely. After one of the attacks, a call came into the Vallejo Police Department. The voice on the line was calm, measured, and completely controlled. The caller didn't ask for help. He didn't sound afraid or remorseful. He confessed in a monotone voice. He described the attack he had just committed, providing details that only the killer could possibly know. And then he hung up. The call was quickly traced to a nearby payphone. By the time police cars screeched to a halt at the location, the caller was gone. But the damage was done. The killer had crossed an invisible line. Not just from violence to murder, but from anonymity to infamy. That single phone call sent shockwaves through the entire state of California. This wasn't a man trying to escape justice. This was a man who wanted to be heard. He wanted the police to know that he was in control of the game. He wanted the public to feel his presence, to feel watched, even when they were in their own homes. The idea that a killer would calmly report his own crime and then simply walk away was horrifying. It meant he felt untouchable. And for the moment, he was. Investigators now knew they weren't dealing with an ordinary criminal. This killer wasn't driven by impulse or greed alone. He was driven by something far more sinister, a craving for attention, for recognition, for power over an entire population. The violence, they realized, was only part of his story. The communication, the taunting, the contact was just as important to him, and they had a sinking feeling that it was about to escalate even further. The attacks had already spread a blanket of fear across Northern California, but that phone call marked the beginning of something new. Something that would cement itself in the annals of true crime. It signaled the arrival of a killer who didn't just murder, but who engaged with his pursuers. A killer who didn't hide in the shadows, but who stepped into the spotlight to announce himself. This was no longer just a series of crimes. It was the beginning of a dark and twisted legend. A legend that would soon give itself a name, signed in code and cipher at the bottom of a letter. The Legend of the Zodiac. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as chilling as we did, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world's most mysterious cases.